She almost didn't stop. The road was empty. The rain was light. And the chip on the shoulder looked like just another animal hit toolate. But then she saw movement. A bobcat, thin, choked, barely breathing, curled protectively around two tiny kittens, her body positioned like a shield against the cold asphalt. The woman pulled over without thinking. The motor didn't run, didn't growl, didn't lift her head. She just tightened her body around her babies, as if she knew this was her last chance to keep them alive. Wrapped in a jacket and shaking from exhaustion, the bobcat allowed herself to be lifted. At the clinic, vets rushed the family inside, fighting hypothermia, dehydration, starvation. For a moment, it looked like a miracle rescue. Until one of the vets froze. Not at the injuries. Not at the kittens. At something far smaller. A chip, embedded beneath the bobcat's skin. And the second the scanner beeped, the room went silent, because this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was evidence, and someone had broken the lab. Minutes later, the police were on their way. The rain had just started when Emily saw her. Not a downpour. Just enough to darken the pavement and blur the edges of the world. The highway outside the town was nearly empty, stretching forward in long, grey silence. Emily had driven this road dozens of times before. She knew every bend, every mile marker. That's why the chip on the shoulder caught her eye. At first, she thought it was roadkill. A low, hunched form near the guardrail. Still, unmoving. She slowed instinctively, her headlights washing over wet fur instead of feathers or debris. And then, just as she was about to pass, the shape shifted. Slightly, painfully, Emily's foot hit the brake. The car rolled to a stop a few yards ahead. Her heart started to pound, not from fear, but from recognition. She volunteered at shelters long enough to know the difference between something already gone and something barely hanging on. She grabbed her coat and stepped out into the cold drizzle. It was a bobcat, an adult female, lying on her side, ribs faintly visible beneath a soaked, matte coat. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. One ear twitched quickly as Emily approached. But what stopped Emily cold wasn't the motor. It was what was beneath her. Two kittens, impossibly small, pressed into her belly, their spotted bodies trembling. The motor's front legs were wrapped around them, her spine curved unnaturally to keep her weight off their fragile forms. Emily knelt, her breath catching. Oh, no. The bobcat lifted her head just an inch. Her eyes met Emily's, not wild, not aggressive. Exhausted, protective. The kittens whimpered softly, their tiny cries barely audible over the rain. One tried to crawl closer to the warmth of his motor's chest. Emily pulled off her jacket without thinking and gently dropped it over the family, shielding them from the cold. The motor bobcat didn't resist. She didn't move at all. That frightened Emily more than a growl ever cold. "You're freezing," Emily whispered. "You won't make it out here." She glanced up and down the road. No traffic, no help. Just rain, darkness, and three leaves balanced on the edge. Emily made a decision she would reply in her mind for years afterward. She slid her hands carefully under the bobcat's body, lifting just enough to support her without separating her from the kittens. The motor let out a low, weak sound. Not anger, not fear. Pain. "I'm taking you in," Emily said softly. "All of you." The kittens skirmed, crying louder now, startled by the movement. The bobcat tightened her grip around them instinctively, even as her strength faded. Emily moved quickly, ear-rattling, placing them gently into the back seat on a blanket she kept in the trunk. She turned the heat up full blast. As I drove, she glanced back repeatedly, checking their breathing at every red light. The motor bobcat never took her eyes off Emily. Not once. It wasn't a trust. It wasn't a surrender. It was calculation. The look of an animal that knew she had no other choice. The clinic lights appeared ahead like a lifeline. Emily pulled into the parking lot and ran for the door, shouting for help. Inside, everything moved fast. Beds, towels, worms, urgent voices. As the team worked to stabilize the family, Emily stepped back, hands shaking. Shook to the bone. She thought the hardest part was over. She had no idea the real danger until even started yet. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and wet fur. Emily stood against the wall, arms wrapped tightly around herself as staff moved with controlled urgency around the bobcat and her kittens. Towels were replaced with dry ones. Eight lamps clicked on. One bed focused on the kittens, gently rubbing their teeny bodies to stimulate circulation, while another worked on the motor, checking her breathing and pulse. Severely hypothermic, the vet said quietly. Malnourished too. Probably hasn't eaten in days. Emily swallowed. Is she going to make it? The vet didn't answer right away. We try. That was all anyone could promise. The kittens were placed in a warming box, their cries growing a little stronger as they had returned to their bodies. One curled instinctively toward the other, pressing close, searching for familiarity. Across the room, the mother bobcat lay still, chest rising shallowly beneath a blanket. As part of routine procedure, the vet reached for a handheld scanner. Emily barely noticed at first. She assumed it was for temperature or heart rate. She watched instead as a touch shaved a small patch of fur from the bobcat's shoulder. Then came the sound. Beep. The vet froze. Not the kind of pause that comes from concern, but recognition. She ran the scanner again, slower this time. Beep. The room changed instantly. Conversation stopped. Hands paused mid-motion. Someone near the door straightened. The vet's brow furrowed. That can't be right. What? Emily asked, her voice small. The vet exchanged a glance with another staff member, then looked back at the scanner. This bobcat, she has a microchip. Emily blinked. Ah, what? A chip, the vet repeated carefully. The kind used for domestic animals. Pets. Legally registered. Emily's stomach dropped. But says wild. Yes, the vet said. Which means she shouldn't have one. Silence spread across the room. The implication settled in slowly, heavily. A chipped bobcat meant illegal ownership, captive wildlife, possibly trafficking, neglect. This isn't normal, another staff member said under her breath. Not at all. The vet exhaled, already reaching for the phone. By love, we have to report this. Emily's heart started to race. Report it? Report who? We don't know yet, the vet said. But this used become a legal matter. She stepped away to make the call. Emily stared at the bobcat, suddenly seeing her differently. Not used as a starving wild animal, but as something else entirely. A survivor. Thus this man is going to be taken away. Emily asked quietly. The vet shook her head. No. It means we protect her. And the kittens. But it also means someone broke the law. Minutes later, the sound of sirens could throw the rain outside. Emily flinched. The vet returned, her expression firm. Police are on their way. Wildlife services too. For what? Emily whispered. To find out how a protected wild animal ended up chipped, starving, and abandoned on the side of a road. Emily looked at the mother bobcat again. Her eyes were half open now, unfocused but aware. One ear twitched at the distant sound of sirens. Emily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. This isn't a used a rescue anymore, she murmured. No one disagreed. Because whatever story the bobcat carried beneath her fur, whatever past had led her to that roadside, it was about to come out. The sound of boots echoed down the clinic hallway before anyone saw them. Two officers stepped inside, rain still clinging to their jackets, followed closely by a wildlife officer carrying a clipboard. Their presence shifted the room instantly. What had felt like a place of care now carried the weight of procedure. Emily stood straight, suddenly aware of how small she felt. We received a call about a chipped bobcat, one of the officers said calmly. His voice wasn't accusatory, but it wasn't casual either. Can someone walk us through what happened? The vet nodded and gestured toward the treatment table. She was found roadside with 2 kittens. Severe hypothermia. Malnutrition. When we scanned her, the chip registered as a domestic animal. The wildlife officer frowned. That shouldn't exist. That's what we thought, the vet replied. Emily cleared her throat. I found them. She was barely breathing. The kittens were under her. The officer turned to her. You did the right thing bringing them here. That helped a little. The wildlife officer stepped closer to the bobcat, studying her condition. This isn't a just abandonment, he said quietly. This looks like long-term neglect. Can you tell who the chip belongs to? Emily asked. The vet handed over a printout. It's registered. Name. Address. Out of state. The officer's jaw tightened. So someone owned her. The room fell silent again. Owned. The word sat heavily in the air. The motor bobcat shifted slightly, letting out a weak sound. One of the kittens cried softly from the warming box. The wildlife officer glanced toward them, then back at the paperwork. She shouldn't have been in captivity, Essel. Bobcats don't thrive like this. And she certainly shouldn't have been breathing. Emily felt her chest tighten. So, what happens now? The officer folded the paper. Now we investigate. Another officer stepped toward the door. Animal Control and Wildlife Services will take custody on this stable. Custody? Emily echoed. The vet met her eyes. It means protection. No one is taking her back. Emily exhaled slowly. The wildlife officer continued, voice measured. If this chip leads us to someone keeping wild animals illegally, this could be a much larger case. Emily glanced at the bobcat again. She had been starving. She had been pregnant. She had been abandoned. Not lost. Discarded. She was left to die. Emily said quietly. The officer didn't contradict her. We need your statement, he said gently. Everything you saw on the roadside. Emily nodded, hands shaking slightly as she followed him to a small office near the front desk. As she spoke, recounting the rain, the kittens, the way the motor never tried to run, something settled in her chest. This bobcat hadn't just been rescued from the cold. She had escaped something far worse. When Emily finished, the officer closed his notebook. Thank you. We kept you informed. Outside the office, the clinic hummed with quiet tension. The wildlife officer spoke with the vet in low voices. The kittens slept, bundled together, and aware of the storm forming around their existence. The motor bobcat opened her eyes briefly. Emily caught the look, tired, dulled by suffering, but still sharp enough to feel the shift in the room. They're here for you, Emily whispered softly. You're safe now. The bobcat didn't move, but her breathing steadied. And somewhere beyond the clinic walls, a story that had been hidden for years was finally beginning to surface. The answers didn't come quickly. They never do. By the next morning, the rain had stopped, but the tension inside the clinic hadn't lifted. The bobcat remained sedated, her body wrapped in warm blankets, quattro fluids slowly restoring what months of neglect had taken away. The kittens slept curled together, their tiny chests rising and falling in steady rhythm. Emily returned to the clinic just after sunrise. She hadn't planned to. She just couldn't stay away. The wildlife officer was already there, standing near the front desk with a laptop open and a stack of paperwork spread beside him. His face was set in the kind of expression people wear when the truth is unfolding in pieces. We trust the chip, he said when I saw her. It's real. Registered 6 years ago. Emily's stomach tightened. To who? He hesitated, then spoke carefully. A man named Richard Dale, former exotic animal handler. License revoked years back. The words landed harder than she expected. Revoked? She asked. For multiple violations, he said. Improper housing. and reported breathing. Failure to provide veterinary care. Emily closed her eyes briefly. So I kept her illegally. Yes. And based on her condition, for a long time. The wildlife officer scrolled through old records, photos, inspection reports, citations. The bobcat's life began to take shape in fragments. A younger version of her veined wire fencing, a small enclosure, signs warning visitors not to approach. She was confiscated on and continued, but she disappeared before a transfer to a sanctuary. We assumed she'd been sold or moved. Emily felt a chill. You think I dumped her? We think she became inconvenient, I said quietly. Pregnant, sick, hard to heal. Emily looked through the glass at the bobcat, her ribs still visible even under blankets. She survived all that, Emily whispered. Barely, the vet said, joining them. Another day on the road and she wouldn't have. The wildlife officer nodded. We've alerted the state authorities. This might turn into a broader investigation. Emily swallowed. What about her? And the kittens? They're protected now, SL. No one is claiming them. No one legally can. Relief washed through her, but it was tangled with something heavier, because survival didn't erase what had been done to her. Later that afternoon, the bobcat stared. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. Emily stood quietly near the doorway, not wanting to intrude. The vet checked her vitals, murmuring reassurance. She's waking up, the vet said softly. Strong heart, still weak, but she's fighting. The bobcat's gaze drifted, past the lights, past the equipment, until it landed on the kittens. Her breathing changed immediately. She shifted, attempting to lift her head. A low sound escaped her throat. Not fear, not aggression. Recognition. Emily felt her chest tighten. She knows, the vet whispered. She never stopped knowing. The wildlife officer watched from a distance. Whatever she went through, said, she didn't lose her instincts. Punto. Emily thought of the road sash. The way the bobcat had wrapped herself around her babies, shielding them with her own falling body. She didn't just survive captivity, Emily said. She protected them through it. The officer nodded slowly. That might have been the only freedom she had. As evening settled, the clinic quieted again. Outside, the road stretched empty and ordinary, betraying nothing of the secret it had nearly swallowed. Emily stood by the window one last time before leaving. She's safe now, she said softly. All of them are. The wildlife officer closed his file. Yes. And now, the truth is too. But the story wasn't finished yet. Because healing don't end with rescue. And justice don't always come with sirens. Sometimes, it arrives slowly, one life at a time. Healing didn't happen all at once. It never does. The bobcat's recovery came in small, measured steps, a deeper breath, a steady heartbeat, a little more strength returning to her limbs each day. The vet adjusted fluids, monitored infections, and kept human contact to a minimum. She was treated with care, but also with distance. She was not a pet. She was not a patient meant to stay. She was wild. Emily learned this quickly. She watched from doorways, spoke in whispers, and resisted the instinct to comfort. The bobcat didn't need soothing words. She needed space to remember who she was. The kittens recovered faster. Within days, their cries grew louder. Their movement stronger. They began to explore the edges of their enclosure, tiny paws clumsy but determined. When the bobcat was finally brought into the summer recovery room, the change was immediate. She lifted her head. Her breathing weakened. Her body angled protectively toward them. The kittens crawled to her without hesitation, pressing into her fur, nursing weakly at first, then with growing confidence. Emily stood frozen at the sight. She never stopped being their mother, the vet murmured, even when everything else was taken from her. But recovery came with a cost. The bobcat startled easily. Sudden movements made the hair flinch. Certain sounds, metal clinks, sharp clicks, sent her body into tense stillness. Signs of captivity lingered beneath the healing skin. The wildlife officer returned regularly, updating the staff. The owner has been located, he said one afternoon. He's sick. Not well enough to hide what he did. Emily's jaw tightened. Will be charged? Yes, the officer said. But this isn't about punishment anymore. It's about preventing this from happening again. Emily looked at the bobcat through the glass. Justice felt distant. Survival felt immediate. Weeks passed. The bobcat gained weight. Her coat regained its natural scent. The kittens grew bold, playful, unafraid of their own strengths. They climbed, tumbled, and wrestled beneath their mother's watchful eyes. But something else changed too. The bobcat began to pace. Not nervously, deliberately. She's getting ready, the vet said. She knows she don't belong here. Emily nodded. And the kittens? They go with her. Together. That night, Emily stood outside the clinic, breathing in the cooler. The road was quiet again. Just as it had been the nights she stopped. She realized that rescue was only the beginning. The harder part was letting go, trusting that the world that nearly killed them could also hold them. Inside, the bobcat lay curled around her babies, eyes half-closed but alert, strength returning not used to her body, but to her spirit. She had survived captivity. She had survived abandonment. She had survived the road. Now, she was preparing for the last test, returning to a world that owed her nothing, but would finally give her the one thing she had been denied for far too long. Freedom. The morning of the release arrived quietly. No announcements. No crowd. Just a pale sky and the soft of tears as the transport vehicle rolled to a stop at the edge of the preserve. Emily stood a few steps back, hands clasped together, unsure where to look. The wildlife team moved with practiced calm, unloading the carrier and setting it gently on the forest floor. This place was chosen carefully, far from roads, rich with cover, close to water. A place where a bobcat could disappear. Inside the carrier, the motors shifted. She knew something was different. Her breathing deepened, her body alert but controlled. The kittens pressed closer to her, instinctively sensing the change. The wildlife officer knelt and unlatched the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. The forest waited. Then the mother bobcat stepped forward. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. She placed one paw on the earth, then another, testing the ground as if remembering it. The smells, the sounds, the open space. Her head lifted slightly, ears rotating, reading the words she hadn't truly known in years. The kittens followed, clumsy, curious, fearless in the way only young animals can be. Emily felt her breath catch. The mother paused and looked back on her. Not at the people, not at the carrier, at her babies. She eyed them gently, guiding them toward the brush. They stumbled, then steadied, their small bodies learning quickly. Within seconds, the forest began to reclaim them. Leaves shifted, branches parted, spotted fur blended into shadow. And then they were gone. No drama, no final glance. Just 3 leaves slipping back into a place that finally belonged to them. Emily exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath the entire time. The wildlife officer closed the empty carrier. That's how it should be, he said quietly. Emily nodded. You know. They stood there for a moment longer, listening to the forest return to itself. Birds called. Wind moved through the trees. The world continued without acknowledging what it had almost lost. As they walked back toward the vehicle, Emily glanced once more at the trail where the bobcat and her kittens had vanished. She thought of the road's air, the rain, the stillness, and how close this story had come to ending differently. Rescue hadn't asked what happened to the bobcat. Justice hadn't undone the harm. But freedom, real freedom, was something no one could take from her again. Emily turned away and followed the others, leaving the forest to its silence. Behind her, somewhere deep among the trees, a motor bobcat led her babies forward. No chip, no cage, no road behind them. Just instinct, just wilderness, and a future that, for the first time, was truly their own.